Hey guys, what's up? I'm Aaron. Today we're gonna be. What are we doing today? Today we're gonna be talking about genetic psychology, and specifically for genetic psychology, we're gonna be talking about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. So yeah, cut that intro. So, what is genetic psychology? I'm so glad you asked. So, genetic psychology is a field of psychology that researches how our genetic makeup, or our DNA, influences our behavior, thoughts, emotions, and mental health. Specifically, today we're going to be going over ADHD. ADHD is a developmental disorder characterized by attention difficulty, hyperactivity, and impulsiveness. So typically ADHD begins in the childhood and continues throughout adulthood, and it can deeply impact the person's life depending on its severity and if they decide to medicate it or not. So for ADHD, there are three main types of symptoms. There are behavioral symptoms, cognitive symptoms, and mood symptoms, and each one carries a different part of it. So behavioral symptoms can include aggression, excitability, fidgeting, or hyperactivity. Cognitive symptoms includes absent-mindedness, difficulty focusing, or forgetfulness. And mood symptoms includes anger, anxiety, and mood swings, things like that. ADHD and genetics. So, it's 2025, and while we know a lot about ADHD, there are still tons of questions concerning the disorder. The causes of ADHD are still being debated, but we know that genetics plays a huge role in its development. Here's the thing about ADHD. It's classified as a heritable polygenic disorder.
Huh?
So, what does that mean? Well, we'll break it out into two parts. Heritable. ADHD is mostly passed down by family members, so if your parents or grandparents have it, there's a high chance that you might have it as well. 2. Polygenic. This refers to a genetic pattern where a single trait is controlled by multiple genes. ADHD is not caused by a single gene, and there are multiple external and internal factors that can lead to its development. ADHD is hereditary. Like I established earlier, ADHD is hereditary. It's pervasive in most families, and people with ADHD in their family are 4 times more likely to develop the disorder than those without ADHD in their family. A great example of this is my family. My dad is diagnosed with ADHD, and he was in his mid-40s, but he's not medicated. I was diagnosed with ADHD at 14, and I am also not medicated, and my younger brother Joshua was diagnosed with ADHD when he was 9. He is medicated. So those are a couple things that we can look at. Specifically, my dad and I. So my dad and I are not medicated for ADHD. While we know that we have it, we've kind of coped with it in different ways. So me specifically, I can speak on the most throughout my childhood, and now I've had a lot of struggles when it comes to focusing, when it comes to being quiet, when it comes to sitting still, not interrupting people, something that really affects me. I also have something that is very common in people with ADHD called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So, rejection sensitivity sounds kind of just like being sensitive, but essentially what it is taking rejection to the deepest level you possibly can. Being rejected for something like asking someone if they want water, or, maybe someone looks at you weird. It kind of affects people with ADHD much more than it would somebody without. It's a big struggle that I have, and it's one of those things that you have to learn to deal with over time. But since I'm not medicated, I've kind of had to figure out how to cope with it on my own. This is voiceover Aaron, and I'm here to say that rejection sensitivity is basically responding like these 3 photos to literally any form of rejection or criticism. I can't ask people to check my essays. If I'm in the room, I have to walk away because I will basically explode. My younger brother, however, is medicated. He has ADHD and he takes medicine, and it helps him significantly. His ADHD is much more severe than mine or my dad's, but it is pretty bad. So he can't go to school and sit down and focus like I have trained myself to, because he's like 11. He was diagnosed when he was 9, so he's still learning how to manage with it, and maybe when he's older he won't want to be medicated, but as it stands right now, being medicated has helped him drastically in school. So kind of just things to look at, although My brother and I definitely have ADHD because of my dad. It does affect each of us differently. I have a lot more mood swings than my dad does, and my dad is kind of a lot better at talking than I am, which sounds kind of weird, but it's true.
Hi, this is voiceover Aaron again, and we're going to look at an infographic about polygenic genes and ADHD, and just like a visual example of what it looks like, because it is kind of a difficult concept to understand. So let's look at that.
So as you can see on the left side, there are multiple genes that cause ADHD. Each of these genes has different presentations in different people, which is what causes ADHD to impact everyone differently. Here's an example of this. Let's say that Bert and Ernie both have ADHD. Bert inherited genes 1, 2, and 3, while Ernie inherited genes 4, 5, and 6. Bert's ADHD causes him to struggle to pay attention and stay in his seat. He is loud and often interrupts others when speaking. Ernie's ADHD causes mood swings and low self-esteem. He also has trouble following conversations, which are things that Bert doesn't experience quite as frequently. So the genes that you inherit cause ADHD to present itself differently, but no matter what genes lead to your ADHD, you'll still have the same disorder, even if it presents itself differently. So although Bert has an ADHD that causes him to be super hyperactive, Ernie's ADHD causes him to be super inattentive, and while both of them have different types of ADHD, they both experience the same symptoms, just in different frequencies, and that's highly dependent on the genes that they inherit. So, what are the psychological impacts of ADHD? This is kind of my favorite part of the topic of ADHD because, having ADHD doesn't just impact your social life, it also impacts your mental health significantly. So, if you have ADHD, here are a couple of things you're more likely to experience in terms of mental health. You're more likely to have anxiety, depression, and sleeping problems, a conduct disorder like aggression or antisocial behavior, and the biggest one is substance abuse. So, people with ADHD are more likely to abuse substances because of their inherent impulsivity. So, they have difficulty managing emotions, and they have the tendency to seek rewards. Often, they use alcohol as a way to self-medicate, and it can temporarily help their problems and symptoms like restlessness or the anxiety that you have from having ADHD. This can lead to a lot of excessive drinking and alcohol abuse, which can turn into alcoholism, another genetic trait.
I didn't record an outro, so see y'all later.